I'm going to give you guys a very, very, very watered down version of what a government shutdown looks like and what it means, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there of what a government shutdown is and how it affects everybody. How does a government shutdown work? First of all, okay, it doesn't just shut down. The government just doesn't go dark, okay? If that happened, it would be total anarchy, okay? All right? That's how it would work, all right? That's not what it is. Number one, understand the difference between discretionary spending. These are the four keywords you need to know. Discretionary spending versus mandatory spending, okay? Now, I just want you to know this because there's going to be a lot of people out there or a lot of things that are going to use headlines and clickbait on both sides to try to get votes or not votes because of this. Discretionary and mandatory spending and essential versus non-essential workers, okay? And then I guess I could add in furlough and not as well, okay? People on the left are going to say this is Republican only. Republicans are going to do this, whatever. They're destroying it, whatever. People on the right are going to say the Democrats could vote on there, or they refuse to vote, number one. And number two, people on the left are going to say it's a total shutdown and that people are going to starve in the streets. People on the right are going to say there's no shutting down. This is not a big deal, and it's just people that are sucking off of the teat of society that are going to miss out, and fuck them anyways. That's how it's going to go. Welcome. Okay? All right. Now, moving on. How does a government shutdown work? It works out in stages, okay? Discretionary spending versus mandatory spending. These bills are discretionary spending, okay? Mandatory spending is things like Social Security and Medicare. Those are not going away, okay? So that scare tactic on either side of the aisle there is not how this works, okay? Those things are not going to go. A shutdown only cuts discretionary spending, okay? Discretionary spending makes up 27%. Okay, 27% of the federal budget. That's a lot of money, but it's still considered discretionary, not mandatory, okay? So even if the government were to shut down and we were to stop the spending, it's the discretionary spending, okay, not mandatory. I just wanted to put that out there for people that want to understand how that works, okay? Now, there's no specific pathway for how a shutdown works. They're all different, and it all ends up in different ways. Usually, it doesn't last more than a few weeks. The one that we had back in 2018, 2019, or whatever it was, lasted about a month. So, what happens? All right. Well, the first thing that happens is that you get non-essential workers, okay? And they either get furloughed or, and I love this talking point, work without pay. That is illegal. A federal employee is not going to work without pay. It is called back pay, and it comes with interest. Now, can this be dangerous? Yes. 60% of Americans right now are living paycheck to paycheck, okay? So if you are working and you're not getting paid, it can very much so affect you in the short term. If you don't have some kind of safety net or emergency fund or a backup, yes, it can fuck with you. It's not like this is just, oh, everyone's just overblowing this. These people are going to be totally fine. They're going to paid vacation. No, they're not getting paid in real time. So if they do have anything that they really need money for, I'm really in the middle of something right now. Moving back on, back pay with interest. So what happens is if these people have to pay bills in real time, yes, they are going to be affected, but they're not working without pay. That is illegal, okay? That shit is illegal. What happens is they will work and their paychecks will be delayed, but they will get paychecks returned, and oftentimes with interest. So it's not unpaid. Now, non-essential workers. What is considered a non-essential worker? There's actually a lot of them. But the first impacts that you're going to feel from this, the first ones is longer lines at national parks, okay? I'm minimizing this, but I stick with me, okay? So the first thing you're going to start seeing is non-essential workers, right? So like park service people. Like that's the kind of thing you're going to start seeing the first few days, okay? All right. It is going to be non-essential workers. Okay. Now, that's kind of how it starts, right? And then that's like, oh, these people aren't going to be there, so the parks are closed or the national monuments are closed. Like that's kind of how it's happened. I'm using historical precedents. Okay. All right. All right. Now that we got that, it does start affecting more people as you go on. Okay. Non-essential get furloughed. Non-essential with some kind of essentialness get back pay but work without the pay at the time, but they don't pay. The person in Congress who just said they're going to work without pay is lying to you. That was a lie. That was a flat out fucking lie. You can't work without pay. You can't work for free, or that's illegal. The government can't do that, okay? So they get back pay with interest. Now, after that happens, what happens is you start seeing certain agencies start to let people go. Not fire them, but furlough them, send them home, and then pay them when they return, or have them work and back pay them with interest, okay? Now, how does that work? Okay? Part of this is people that work in government agencies, right? Like the Department of Education, right? And I'm going to let you know right now that this all comes down to who is the president and where they start letting it go, because as bad as government shutdowns could potentially be, they are perfect for political jockeying. And I'm not saying anybody lets it happen for that reason, but as we've heard before in the past with politics, never let a good, was it tragedy or never let a good disaster go to waste or whatever, right? Utilize it to the best of your ability. So they'll start going after things that even if it doesn't affect anybody, it can be used. Like, oh my God, we've had to put the Department of Education off the payroll kind of thing, okay? A crisis, thank you, okay? So, how do I put this? So part of the people, for example, that would continue to work without money in the beginning would be our military, right? So our military, you're not going to send those guys home, okay? But you will delay the paychecks for them. Now, that's not going to hurt them, because I was somebody in the military and literally all your bills are paid for. The only thing that you're not paid for is like your 30% APR that you pay on your fucking Mustang or your Charger that you bought when you got in. Otherwise, everything's paid for. So these guys are fine, but they will be ones that have to delay paychecks. This here is the biggest political tool that's used during shutdowns. Doesn't matter what party you're on. Our military service members are sacrificing their lives, and they're not getting a paycheck. That will get the fire burning under a lot of people's asses. Because one thing you don't mess with besides children and pets in America, number 3 is the military. It's not like it used to be, but it's still there, okay? You don't do that, all right? All right, that's 1.3 million people that are on active duty. Next is government contractors, okay? Government contractors won't be paid at the time. They'll be back pay or furloughed. They will stop government contracting jobs and wait until the government reopens, right? Most of this is going to be military contracts, but they're going to keep them working and give them a huge back pay with interest. They're not going to stop military contractors, but military contractors will be the next ones, right? So now we've gone from people that work like in the park services to whatnot like that. Now we go to the military. None of them are not going to get paid. They're going to get paid, but they're going to get paid back pay with interest or furloughed, not the military. That's going to be these guys. These guys will probably get furloughed. So now let's say we've gone a week or two in, and that's where we're at. Next comes government agency, okay? Now, true or false? Most of these government agencies are ridiculously fucked with their money. Like, some of them are getting crazy amounts of funding, and they're still falling behind because the funding is not appropriated correctly. It's either fraud, waste, abuse, or overspending, or red tape, or whatever, right? Either way, though, they're still agencies that have a function in our society. Department of Education will be one of the first ones, okay? All right? Then you've got IRS. You've got FDA. You've got well, the FDA is kind of not really. Let's start with SEC. Technically, is another one. Okay, you've got CDC. A lot of these, they will start furloughing or having people work with back pay in these agencies. Now, we've had shutdowns that have lasted a month, and it had zero effect on our operations in the government. That's why I'm always downplaying it, because it's usually more of a political thing. If the shutdown lasts 60, 90 days, then we can start running into issues. But right now, remember, we have shutdowns in the past, and they never got to a point where it actually really affected the economy or the government functions, okay? Half those agencies already don't do anything, Stocky. Okay, whatever, all right? So the reason I wanted to bring this up to you guys is I'm not saying that a government shutdown can't be a bad thing, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be worried about it. I just want you guys to understand how it works, okay? All right? Now, here's the thing. After a few weeks, we do start running into some issues, okay, depending on how the government decides they want to go forward, right? This is why continuing resolutions and stopgaps are important. Oftentimes, what will happen is Congress will get together and say, we are not going to pass a resolution where we're going to continue to debate this and figure out what we want, but we will do small earmark bills. And the reason is there are certain government benefits that after a few weeks need to be supplied, or you do start seeing a problem, okay? And it's not just a political thing, okay? And that is things like SNAP benefits and WIC, okay? For those of you guys who are unaware of what these things are, congratulations. You didn't have to go through it. People that have either been on this or lived with parents or family members that were on it, you'll know what these are, okay? We used to call them food stamps. We used to actually get a booklet of fucking fake money stamps that we used to, well, my mom traded them for money and drugs, but it is what it is, okay? There are a lot of people on these benefits. Maybe one day I'll do a whole video on how much welfare is, and you guys would be surprised where the states that have the most people on welfare actually live. Now, population-wise, obviously California is going to be a big population, but per capita, there are some states you probably wouldn't expect are in the top, okay? Even Florida is in the top 10 per capita, okay? Oregon, top 10, right? Illinois, top 7. I mean, there's a lot. Okay, a lot of people are, and this isn't a political issue. People are going to be like, it's red states or blue states. No, there's a lot of people on forms of welfare, and it's even more so today. There are people on welfare right now who were making $150,000 a year 5 years ago, 3 years ago. They're just going through some tough times, okay? But SNAP and WIC, when these payments stop going out, that's when you have real fucking problems, okay? Regardless of your opinion on if those people should be on those benefits, shouldn't be on those benefits, if they're milking the system, they're not milking the system, it doesn't matter. When those payments stop, if those payments stop, which they most likely won't because they'll do some kind of stopgap for that, but if it did, now you've got a problem. Because the everyday average American person / citizen / voter doesn't care about the fucking national park line or if they're going to be able to get into the Washington Monument that week. Or they don't care if the military is getting their paychecks 2 weeks late. They don't care if the Department of Education is furloughing 15% of their workers. But if they're not able to get food or benefits, that's when problems start. And as a government, this is when you don't want to get to this point. No one cares about tourism. Yes, C-SPAN rules. You're absolutely correct. The ability for people to feed their fucking children and people getting into a national park is on the same level. Thank you so much for interjecting that in the conversation. I'm so happy that you were able to follow along and correct me. I was wrong, guys. Apologies. Okay, I do apologize. I should have put them on the same touring national monuments. Okay, let's keep those on the same playing field here. Okay? All right. Back to what I was saying. This is what government doesn't want. They do not. Well, the parks don't shut down. It's just the workers aren't there. So some of it's off limits or the tours are shut down or whatever. This is usually where we see 2 weeks out. Now, I am not going to make a connection with what we just saw happen in Philadelphia, for example, but because people actually need food. 2 separate topics there, okay? But there's always concerns of cities, especially when something like this goes out, because there's probably just as many people, and this is a fact a lot of people don't want to hear, and I'm always just going to give you guys numbers and facts. I'm not going to give you my personal take or try to pick a side here. And I know then the more people who give me shit for not picking sides, the more I laugh at, because when you look at me and call me a stupid centrist, I hear you saying, wow, you think for yourself. There are more people in the suburbs and in the farms and in the countryside on welfare and food stamps than there are in the inner cities. Okay, so it's not a population thing. But the density of the population is the concern. And when people see large groups of people doing something, they are more likely to get involved, causing a bigger crowd, and that causes a bigger crowd, and that causes hysteria. That's the concern, okay? All right? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, those are also cities, and cities are generally Democrat, so that's a different side. The Congress has to come to the table. That's an unknown, so I don't want to get into that, okay? Now, the next thing to go, Section 8 housing, okay? These are all government-funded programs. We haven't gotten to this point, but this is the concern that we get to when we start getting 2 weeks in. So we've already talked about 1 day, 1 week, 2 weeks, and now 3 weeks to 3 weeks in. Section 8 housing, okay? Now, the thing about Section 8 housing is it is government-funded, and those checks come from the government. At the same time, the structure, depending on the state, the actual building that supports that, the government normally could step in to stop evictions from happening, but if the government is shut down, that same department, if it is underfunded and furloughed, which I don't think they would ever get there, because once again, there's essential and non-essential funding. If that essential funding or it's non-essential funding were to dry up, there would be no one to tell them they can't, and so you could be people seeing concern. Now, this is kind of a red herring because unless you're 2 months into a shutdown, these people aren't going to kick out their Section 8 people. Because if they evicted their Section 8 people and they lost that Section 8 voucher agreement with the government, well, maybe some of them right now in this economy. Actually, you know what? I take that back. Depending on where you're at, they might actually want that to happen because they could probably flip it for a lot more money. But most of them aren't going to want to lose that Section 8 designation because that's free guaranteed paychecks coming in, okay? All right? So now we got Section 8. This is guaranteed. Okay, this is a government check coming in. Now, you might think Section 8, oh, that's just poor people. I don't want poor people messing up my thing. Oh, Section 8 housing is always trash. Well, it depends on where it is, right? If it's in like if you go to a government housing place, the government just gives the money and doesn't do shit. They bid out to the lowest bidder, and it's generally there's more crime or more, problems than other places, but that's kind of that's the part of the thing. It's like, okay, when the government's involved, generally quality goes down, but it's also still a guarantee, right? So people have a place to stay. That's important. But for the owner of the building, that's a guaranteed check coming in. And they get tax benefits on the actual building, and the government will come in and do cleaning and repairing and doing, assessments and whatnot. It may not be the best, but it's still something not out of your pocket. A lot of building owners love Section 8. They love it. Okay? All right? Lots of write-offs there, exactly. Now, 4 weeks in. Remember how we talked about 2 weeks, 3 weeks? A lot of people in the media will say, well, that's when the Democrats are going to have to get scared because that's their basis, which is a bullshit fucking thing. Because like I said, there's more people in rural and suburban and country locations on government assistance than there are in the inner cities. Nobody tells you that because we don't like to play. We like to play our partisan politics, right? But here's the thing. 4 weeks in, now you got the vets. If veteran paychecks stop going out, well, a lot of veterans, especially older veterans, tend to be more conservative voters. Their benefits and paychecks start going. Now, the Republicans got a problem, right? Because everybody's talking about who's getting their money. And one thing is that if a shutdown were to go a long way, I would hate to be around the politics because this is going to give everybody an insight onto how many people are actually on, like how many people complain about government benefits but are actually receiving government benefits in some way. And like I said, I'm going to stay away from partisan or personal politics, but I personally see a lot of people who are the beneficiaries of government programs hitting on other people getting government programs because it's a different program or it's a program that's more tied to poverty instead of whatever. It's just a weird thing. But there's a lot of people, right, that get government assistance. Everybody wants a fucking break. How many people out there do you think take advantage of Homestead Act for their property taxes? You're getting a government subsidy. You're getting assistance from the government. We want to save money or we want to get capital. We want it. I'm only bringing this up because this is where we go with the government shutdown, okay? Now, one thing that I often see talked about is customer service is the first one to go. I didn't bring that up because the government's customer service is already there is no customer. You're not going to miss anything. But those agencies, right? So essential versus non-essentials. All right? After a month, as much as 90% of certain government agencies could be furloughed or working with back pay coming. Okay? Now, when it comes to government agencies, half of y'all want to see the SEC. Right now, every trading Discord and Zach Morris wannabe is seeing this government shutdown and been going, fuck yeah, let's go. Okay? The other half, everybody out there who hates capitalism or the government or not government or money and all that stuff like that wants to see the Department of Education go down. Because guess what? If the Department of Education isn't funded, guess what? Repayments don't really get collected or started off right off the bat. That's right. Great timing with those loan repayments. Okay? Essentially, what matters is the amount of time. Time and stopgaps. Right? So when you hear government shutdown, when you hear the Republican shutdown, well, the shutdown's happening because the Republican Party is debating. A lot of people don't like that, but can I be honest with you? If it was the other side and the government shutdown was going because the Democrats were debating each other, I don't want to see a shutdown, but I'm happy because it shows that it's working. Like we don't just push things through. We actually debate. We talk. We fight. We do what politics are supposed to do. The moment that everything always gets passed clean is when you got to be scared of a government. But at the same time, we don't want it to be here because this affects us, right? So we want to see discourse. We want to see disagreements. We want to see people being held accountable and people being called out and shit like that. But at the same time, we don't like this right now because it can affect us in different ways. Now, we'll say it's a Republican one because they're the ones fighting, but the Democrats are going to vote against it anyways or vote for it anyways. If it was Democrats fighting each other, the Republicans, they're voting for it or against it cleanly. It's going to be easy to go either side here. Now, in this case, yes, it is a shutdown because of the disagreements within the Republican Party. I kind of wish there was disagreements in both parties so that they could kind of say, okay, we got to give and take a little bit here and there and come up with something instead of just cleanly passing it. But that's not where we're at. So we got to face reality, okay? If a government shutdown happens, now we have until Sunday, okay? It happens until Sunday, or we have until Sunday. If the government shutdown goes in place, that's why I broke down this entire thing for you guys. So you know, obviously I can't guarantee what the timeline is going to be because every shutdown is different, but it starts very small. It doesn't just go into this idea that, oh my God, this is why when I hear people on both sides talking about the shutdown, I hate it because I know they're full of shit. Like the lady we heard earlier, right? A total government shutdown. No. The police are not going to go. We have long-standing mandatory, I already wrote it down, only the discretionary spending is affected, which makes up 27% of the budget. Mandatory spending isn't affected. So this idea that old people aren't going to get their medication and the police are going to stop responding and the fire department isn't going to put out fires and the trash is going to build up in the streets, that's full of fucking shit, okay? No, we don't want discretionary spending to go down. We all love. That's what's funny. We all fight. We all talk about how much we just want to just push the bills through, pass the spending, raise the debt ceiling, and then we complain about our national debt. Why is our national debt so high? And it's like, wait, you gotta understand. We gotta whatever. I'm not saying in this case. I'm just talking about in general, right? But that's part of that discretionary spending. Mandatory spending isn't going anywhere. This is not affected. This is already in play. This money is set aside, it's earmarked, it's ready to go. Discretionary spending, and it's a slow process, okay? It is a slow process of how the government shutdown happens. It is not just a shutdown. Nobody flips a switch and the government's off. It is a slow process. Other than hearing about it, you wouldn't even notice that it happened for several weeks. And then you would start noticing it if you relied on the government for assistance because it's going to be slow to get those paychecks or slow to get those assistance to paychecks. Nothing's going to get shut off. They're not going to not come to a deal ever. This is a political jockeying point. It has happened every single time that there has been a government shutdown. The economy didn't slow down. The markets didn't tank. This is political theater. So I'm not saying that there's not people that are going to be affected by this. I just want you guys to understand how a government shutdown works so you're not being fed bullshit about how this is going to go. Okay? I want you to understand that there's a process that you probably won't even realize that there was anything that happened. Bring me something. I can eat anything? Yes, except for what you cooked last night. You became woke since you stream on Twitch? What? I've been called a lot of things. Poppy, daddy, a lint licker. I've been called a snowflake. Petite, a wood thief, a furu.